Welcome to the In Memory of Man podcast, a show dedicated to the brave new world of crime, artificial intelligence, and need. The future is now. Here's your host, criminal trial lawyer, researcher, and author, Robert Kiesling.
Hello, welcome to the Robot Crime Blog podcast. This is episode 4. I am your host, Robert Kiesling, criminal trial lawyer out of Austin, Texas. Purpose of this podcast is to give you, the listener, the 411 on artificial intelligence and all things related to the criminal justice system. Last time I talked to y'all, we were talking about robot brothels, which was quite an interesting subject. And if you want to know more about that episode, you can go back to robotcrimeblog.com. And there's some other, obviously, podcast apps out there, Spotify and iTunes, that you can access that podcast as well. Alrighty, so I told you this time we would be talking about facial recognition. And if this subject doesn't create stir some kind of passion in you to create a debate and tell people about it, I don't know what episode will. Before we do that, I'd like to go ahead and read you the news. In the news, Google says it accidentally sent some users' private videos to strangers. Very encouraging. Government unveils new electronic tags for people under coronavirus home quarantine. Facial recognition fails on race, government study says. Lastly, the EU might ban facial recognition tech for 5 years. I highly recommend that they do that and allow these companies a little bit more time to develop the software before it's implemented into reality. Let me thank my sponsors real quick before we talk about the main subject of facial recognition. Law offices of RRK for all your family and criminal trial needs. Also, bigsmoke.com, and smoke is with a QUE. Lastly, Discredited Citizen, a novel about a man who is falsely accused of murder, set in 2030, who must make an impossible choice. Let's talk about facial recognition, folks. This is going to be interesting. Now, I want to find out from you if this scenario that I'm about to tell you is now or it's in some probable future or predicted future. So, man just finishes a jog, heart rate is elevated, and he stops at the crosswalk waiting for the light to change so he can go on to the other side. Well, he's a little impatient and he decides, there's no cars coming. He jaywalks. Well, as soon as he jaywalks, his face is displayed on a gigantic billboard like you'd see in Times Square. And along with that, then there's kind of like the Matrix screen. I don't know if you know what it is, but billions of code is running on right next to his face. Well, that's because on the street, there's this police officer that has these futuristic looking glasses on, that's running his face through a database of mugshots. Turns out that his face is similar to another gentleman's face that committed tech theft or something, some kind of theft. That's a felony theft. Well, then all of a sudden his phone alerts him and says, stay where you are, you've committed a crime, authorities are on their way. Then all the phones on both sides of him, or really all around him, go off and say, there's a criminal in your midst, please stay away from this dangerous person, and all the people scatter like roaches. His family is then notified, his friends are notified that he's committed this crime, his employment's notified that he's committed this crime, his landlord is notified that he's committed this crime, all transportation is notified that he's committed this crime, and he has essentially nowhere to go. Authorities pick him up, they arrest him, and because of the nature of the theft, the tech theft charge, he is not eligible for bail. Well, his employer immediately suspends him. The people that affiliated with him don't want to get in trouble because there's a law that says if they do associate with him, that they'll get into trouble by associating with him. Then you also have his landlord doesn't want this dangerous person in the community, so he gets booted out by the landlord, or he can't pay rent because he can't make bail to get out to pay the rent and take care of that situation. Well, let's say a month goes by, 2 months go by, then the prosecutor says, oh, we've made a mistake. You look just similar to this other gentleman, so sorry about the arrest and your life, but good luck. Here you go. Here's a paper that exonerates you. He runs to his employer and says, hey, I didn't do it. Look, I didn't do it. Do you think the employer took him back? No, of course they didn't. They replaced him. I mean, it's been months, right? And in worst case scenario, what if he had to plea to get out because of the time that has elapsed in pleading to a crime he didn't commit? Folks, it happens every day. And I don't think this scenario is going to be any different. Then his friends, which is going to be probably pretty irreparable, they're still not going to want to associate with him just because of the dark cloud that surrounds him, right? And hopefully his parents still want to take him in, but I don't know, who knows in the scenario. Well, that is the here and now. That's over in China. But the one part that isn't over in China, that is here in the United States, is these private companies that people are working for. And I've represented clients, personally represented clients recently that have been arrested for a charge, and the employer is notified right away. Then HR lets them go, or puts them on leave and then lets them go, depending on what the policy and procedure is. But that's a scary trend. So you're going to lose. The employer knows about it right away. And instead of being innocent until proven guilty by your employer, you're guilty till proven innocent. And then they probably let you go and they hire someone else. Folks, I don't think that's fair. Do you? Well, that's another issue for debate, right? The other issue is that these tech companies that are helping China create this Orwellian state, and that's my term, that's my opinion, it's an Orwellian state, are from the United States, from the West. Well, my concern is if they don't worry about those people's rights over there, then do you think they worry about stomping on our constitutional rights here? And I'm not naming any companies. You can do your own research and figure that out for yourself. But no, I can tell you they don't if they're not worrying about it over there. Then you have another issue. What is that issue? You have this technocracy, and you have the Constitution. Our rights, right? Well, this technocracy is going above the law. And what I mean by that is when you have a virtual prison, right, because of the amount of information that these private companies are giving out to all these people, private and public, about you immediately, and they don't have to abide by the Constitution because they're private companies, then you're in a virtual prison and you have nowhere else to go, nowhere to turn, until you've either been exonerated or your case has been concluded. That needs to change. There has to be some kind of protocols. The legislation needs to be aware of it, and I think that with how much it can affect someone's life within seconds, people, within seconds, it's a major issue. Just let me give you an example. So the facial recognition software, these legislators, they said, okay, well, we'll go ahead and test some of this data, this facial recognition out, and see what it does. So out of 25,000 mugshots, right, these 25, 28 around there, legislators, they put their faces in this software. Well, they were all these people were labeled as criminals via the mugshots, and none of them were criminals at all. That's a major issue. Now, what about law enforcement, right? I mean, it's a brave new world, and law enforcement is using this unregulated, and we're going to get into that in the next episode. But for example, they're using sketch artists, and those sketch artists are running the sketch through a database, and then that database throws up 10 to 20 people, and these 10 to 20 people, obviously they didn't all do it, one person did it, and it might not even be the person from that sketch artist that presented it. And there's a few cases of which that happened, and a gentleman has been falsely accused as a result. Also, what kind of suggested bias and procedure are in that investigation as well, because of that facial recognition software and whatever kind of promotion that they're using for the facial recognition software for that particular law enforcement. Also scary is that I believe over 90% of the people, Homeland Security said, will be on facial recognition through airports. So what that means is that if that's the case, then that means over 90% of the people in the United States are in a facial recognition database. That said, we're running short on time. Let me give you my quote real quick. Quote is, "Hardest thing to open is a closed mind." Also, that is from Ahmed Kathrada. And if you want to go ahead and give me a review or a comment, please do on iTunes. There's also Twitter, Robot Crime Blog, Facebook. If you know anyone that wants or would be interested in this podcast, please go ahead and let them know about it. And if Skynet doesn't take over by my next episode, I will see you then. Take care.